Welcome, everyone. You are in for a treat today. If this is your first time tuning in, thanks for trying us out. I'm Jason Verlinde. I'm based in Seattle, Washington, and for nearly 20 years now, I've published a keepsake guitar magazine called the Fretboard Journal. It's unique, it's eclectic, it's from the heart, and it speaks to our shared love of guitar. Our 55th issue is about to mail, and with this podcast, we get to once a week share some more stories out of our gear-loving community. And I don't use that word community lightly. If you are a regular podcast listener, I'm guessing we've introduced you to some people who you now feel pretty connected with. Folks like Bill Frisell and Creston Lee, Jamie Stillway, G. Weller, TJ Thompson, Skip Simmons, Blake Mills. These are probably not household names to most of the world, but in our little universe, they've become our dear friends. And this is what I love about my job. This is all my long-winded way of saying, as we approach the holidays, thank you for being a part of the community. Thank you for tuning in. And I am so happy to be checking in this week with another friend of our community, Guru Singh, in what will hopefully be a November annual tradition. Guru Singh, Kundalini yoga master, spiritual teacher, former Reprise Records artist back when he was called Jerry Pond, and all-around super cool guitar fanatic, stopped by. We did this one in person here in Seattle at the Fretboard Journal, so you can go over to our YouTube channel and watch the whole video if you want to see what we're talking about. If you are feeling uneasy or alone right now, he has words of encouragement. He tells us all about his new record in CHANT, which is on all the streaming platforms. I will include a link in the show notes. Seal is on it. He also walks me through just what mantra music is, and I found that super informative. And of course, we hear about the Gibson J-45 that Guru Singh bought in the 50s here in Seattle in the University District. He modified it in the 70s. He continues to play it daily. This is such a cool story. I hope to get it in the magazine soon as well. And I just love that you all let me take you on this wild ride every week, introducing you to people from all aspects of the guitar universe. If you enjoy what I'm up to, thank you so much. I think we're doing something important here that will stand the test of time. I don't take it lightly. I welcome your comments. As always, stay connected with me. Stay connected with our fellow listeners. Get the magazine if you can afford it. It makes for a great gift. Email me, podcast@fretboardjournal.com. Let me know your favorite episodes. Leave a review for this podcast on Apple Podcasts if you can. And you should also know we have a Patreon now for the Fretboard Journal where you can support us even further. I don't do this all alone. The Fretboard Journal is brought to you by a handful of great brands. I hope you'll go support them and celebrate them as well. Peghead Nation for 10 years now has been my favorite place on the internet to become a better acoustic player. You can get your first month free or $20 off any annual subscription with the promo code Fretboard when you check out. Our friends at Mike and Mike's Guitar Bar here in Seattle have so much great inventory right now, including, for you big ticket buyers, a 1958 Gibson ES335 with the PAFs, and they made this incredible description about it on their website that you should all read up on. Stringjoy Strings is offering you all a discount at stringjoy.com with the promo code Fretboard. And our friends at StewMac have so many great gift ideas for any guitar lover in your life. There's an S-style electric guitar kit that's pretty plug and play. It's like $150 right now. It's a cool project. You could do it with your kids, and at the end of it, you've got a guitar. It's incredible. And of course, our friends at Collings Guitars are up to so many interesting things. The Hill Country line, you should go check it out. Follow them on social media. Tell them the Fretboard Journal sent you. And thank you all for tuning in. I really mean that. I hope to see some of you at our Fretboard Summit in August. You can go to fretboardsummit.org to read up on it. And now, without any further delays, round 2 with Guru Singh. We had him on the podcast last year if you want to check that out first, but this is a great conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Welcome.
Thank you.
We had a conversation a year ago, and a lot has happened in the last year. A lot has happened in the last week.
A lot has happened in the last week, yeah.
I feel like before we go deep, I will take a cue from every good yoga class, and we'll start at the beginning. and make it easy for everyone to digest. Guru Singh, you are, how do you, if you're in an elevator, you're a striking presence. If you're in an elevator and there's a precocious kid or maybe a precocious grown-up and they say, who are you? What do you do? What do you tell them?
I tell them that I'm Guru Singh, and that is not a title, it's a name. And that I'm been a yogi since I was born, a musician since I could figure out an instrument, and an artist and a writer. Because my father was a fine artist his entire life. My mother was an incredible musician. And they were both yogis, because my great aunt, who lived in the British Empire back in the early 1900s, it covered a lot of distance in the world, unfortunately for the locals, right? But that being said, she ended up in Calcutta in 1916. And in Calcutta, she met Sri Yukteswar Giri, who was Paramahansa Yogananda's teacher, guru. And Paramahansa Yogananda brought yoga to America through Self-Realization, the organization that primarily got its role in Southern California, but, has influenced people for over 100 years. Anyway, she was sent to America with Paramahansa because she had been studying with Sri Yukteswar for 4 years in Calcutta. And she was my mother's godmother and also raised my mother for the first four to 5 years of her life. And so she was very close tied into our family. So when I was born in 1945, this is more than an elevator pitch.
That's all right.
So when I was born in 1945, this influence of Kriya Yoga was huge in our household. And then Paramahansa Yogananda passed away in 1952, but that was when I was 7 years old. So between the age of 0 and 7, there was this massive influence of Kriya Yoga taking place, and it continued. So as a young child, I was taught to meditate. As a young child, I was taught asana and posture. And the way my parents sort of adopted the yoga was almost like what you would see Tai Chi or Qigong in today's world. And so in the late 60s, when I was sort of playing around with my musical career as a recording artist, I met a Kundalini master, and it was just a natural evolution of a yogic form. And so that's the history of how I became what I am today. But guitars have always, since I was old enough to open my eyes, guitars have been, and banjos. I've got a 4-string and I've got a 6-string banjo. Yeah. No American 5-string, or Irish 5, but the old kind of jazz banjo. Yeah. My grandmother was a big stringed instrument player, and so there was banjos and guitars and all kinds of good stuff.
But to be, in 2024, nearly every strip mall, there's a yoga center of some sort. In the 50s...
I was weird.
That was weird.
When you'd say yoga, they would say yogurt. I don't like that yogurt. And, no, it was here, funny story. I went to my high school 20-year reunion decades ago. And that was the first one I'd been to because I didn't attend the 10-year. And people came up to me and said, I knew you were going to end up like this, And because I looked exactly like this, beard was darker. But, I thought, was that obvious? And yes, it was obvious to them because yoga in the 50s, was not like yoga in the 60s, right? Yoga in the 60s started to catch on, 60s, 70s, and then it really started flowing. But in the 50s, it was very, very small audience and practitioners. Let's look at it. I mean, the beat generation, of the late 40s, Jack Kerouac, and those Hank Williams, just, what could happen with music and consciousness and meditation and awareness and all of that was very isolated back in those days. But that was the world that gave birth to the world that I live in now.
Was yoga at the time something you almost had to practice at home using books as a reference, or were there centers?
No centers.
Yeah.
No centers. I practiced with my family because my family was dedicated to being healthy, vegetarian household. I've taken that on into veganism, but no, I mean, I was just the weirdest guy in the school, it's like, and, but it was interesting, a lot of people have, challenging stories of how they grew up and how the household was. I have a completely unchallenging story of the household. The household was a meditative paradise. And, but when I'd go out into the world, that's when I would feel the discord, right? Being a musician, and they've done studies. They've done MRI studies of the brains of musicians, especially musicians that started at a young age. And the parts of the brain that are more interested in harmonious relationships, are developed much more in musicians than in non-musicians. In other words, people who want to have relationships that have a give and a take, like a jam band that is, performing, like my buddies, the Grateful Dead, right? They all had to share ideas with nobody as the leader. I mean, Jerry was obviously the leader in a certain way, but you couldn't be the leader in every way to be a good jazz band or be a good jam band or jazz band or whatever, right? You had to give and take.
Yeah.
Like an ensemble.
So you grew up in this, at the time, very eclectic household. This guitar, which is very customized.
Oh, the Gibson.
At what age did you buy that?
Okay, so I bought it in 1957, so I was 12 years old.
And at that time, 1957, what music was a 12-year-old, or what music were you listening to? Maybe not the average 12-year-old.
I was listening to anybody who played a guitar.
Yeah.
So, Bill Haley and the Comets, right? And Elvis Presley and anybody that played a guitar. And it was blues guitar, it was jazz guitar, Les Paul, all these people that were playing these guitars. And I was just awestruck by, how you could, it's interesting because they say that that guitar players are better at writing freehand and keyboard players are better at typing on a keyboard.
Okay.
Right? Because you're using, both sides of your brain when you're typing on a piano or a keyboard, sure. Right? But a string player, a guitar player, banjo player, etc., we're doing different things with both sides of our brain, right? One side is keying the notes and the other side is strumming the strings. And so it just seemed really natural to me because my father was a painter, right? My mother a musician. So it just seemed supernatural. And I got all the support of the family that you could possibly imagine.
Gibson J-45? never an inexpensive instrument.
No.
How were you able to afford that at 12?
Family help.
Obviously, it paid for itself. You're still toting it around, which is amazing.
Well, that was the guitar that I was playing when I got my recording contract with Warner Brothers Records. What was it, 1968, 1967? No, it was actually 1966. And it's a guitar that's been, that guitar has probably done a million miles, around the world and all over the place.
It's incredible. Incredible.
And this guitar here,
the Washburn, yeah.
This Washburn, this was my very first guitar.
Yeah.
And this was my grandmother's guitar, and she bought it new in 1904.
Incredible.
And it says inside of it that the Chicago World's Fair 1904. So they built this particular model for the Chicago World's Fair in 1904. And Washburn has gotten a resurgence now too, is the label.
Yeah.
And this was the Washburn version of the Martin, the Pearly Martin, right, which was a parlor guitar. Now, interesting about a parlor guitar, you play it way up here because mostly a parlor guitar didn't have a strap, right? Sure. So you would hold the guitar with your forearm against your body and just strum it here way up above the sound hole.
And you've got silken steels on that and are playing with a felt ukulele pick.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
This is, I put silken steels on this because, a guitar of this age, you don't want to put too much stress on the neck.
Yeah, of course.
But if I were to be playing it in public, I would probably put extra light gauge, or even light gauge, and then untune it, in between performances because, a stronger string or a tighter string is going to bring more sound out of the wood.
Mm-hmm. Both guitars in remarkable shape. I mean, it's incredible. I don't see a crack on either one, which is a testament to you being a good custodian.
Well, I do the same with myself, So, born in 45 means that I'm a few months away from being 80 years old. Mm-hmm. And I remember my mom being asked at the age of 98, how does it feel like to be 98? And she said, feels just like 18, and it's true. I mean, whatever age you are, age is just an attitude.
Yeah.
And guitars, if you take really good care of guitars, they just get richer and richer and richer as the years go by.
Yeah. Folks should tune into the first interview we did last year to kind of get up to speed on where you were musically and how you got signed to Reprise Records. I mean, it's a wild story. It must be, as someone who still lives most of the time in Seattle, Washington, it must be rather a unique experience to drive by places you used to play. Maybe there's a few that are still standing. I don't know, but I mean...
Yeah, well... The main music for the music that I was doing, which was in the early 60s, was folk music. And then I turned it into folk jazz when I went into recording with Reprise, Warner Brothers Reprise. And I was based out of San Francisco at that time. But prior to recording with Warner Brothers, I was based in Seattle, and the music scene was, or at least the folk scene, was the University District, right?
Yeah.
Right there with the University of Washington. And all those coffee houses, right, no longer exist. But they were up and down the street. And it was, Seattle has had a rich, bless him, Quincy just passed.
Yeah.
And, he was here in Seattle. Ray Charles was here in Seattle. And people that were early musical greats. Seattle had a big influence in the music industry. Yeah. And then, of course, in the 60s, then along come Brothers Four out of the University of Washington. Sure. in sort of a replica of the Kingston Trio. Kingston Trio comes out of San Francisco, Brothers Four out of Seattle. And then, of course, Jimi Hendrix and Ray Charles and what have you are just rich. And then, the rest of the music scene that came out of here and grunge and such. But Seattle has got a rich dedication to music. There was a band that was very close to me called the Daily Flash in the 60s. And the Daily Flash was like the Seattle's example of Buffalo Springfield, which turned into a couple of bands, one the Byrds, and another one which was Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. And there was sort of a liquidity on the West Coast between Seattle, Portland, even Vancouver, Portland, San Francisco, and Los Angeles, and players would come from, all of these different cities and join forces.
What happened to that band?
The Daily Flash?
Yeah. The
Daily Flash disintegrated in the late 60s. They were one of the first to land, myself and they and Buffalo Springfield were some of the first bands to land recording contracts. And then, as time goes on and young children, young kids in the teens and 20s, have attitudes, right? Yeah. And so bands can't always hang together.
Sure.
Not everybody can be the Rolling Stones.
Yeah, right? I was going to say, just to name drop for a second, of the bands that did make it and everybody knows, which ones were you the tightest with?
Buffalo Springfield, the Byrds, Grateful Dead, big time, Janice and Big Brother and the Holding Company. Janice and I were like pals. Yeah. We were never partners, but we were always pals because we had such different lifestyles. We couldn't partner, but pals, just like deep respect for the level of voice, the level of to bring your voice out of your body is a full body experience. And those that have been able to do it while playing an instrument, the roughest is to be a drummer and singer at the same time. Right?
Yeah, that is hard.
But Janice was one who, her body was her instrument, right? Yeah. And so my buddies majority of my buddies have passed. One that I just reconnected with was lead guitar player for Daily Flash, Doug Hastings. He now lives on Bainbridge Island. And he played for a little bit with Buffalo Springfield too, on tour because of some things that Stephen Stills had to do elsewhere. Those bands were, and the Doors were also a band that I not only was in touch with then, but have stayed in touch with a couple of the players. And the end result is that there is a whole lot of mantra musicians, which is which is my genre now, that were in the scene back. Mitten of David Pramal and Mitten He was in the London scene. I was in the San Francisco scene. Krishna Das was in the New England scene.
Mm-hmm.
He was, what was it? What was his band called? The Blue Oyster?
Not Blue Oyster Cult.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. He was the lead singer for them.
Okay.
And he quit just before they took off and made it really big. And he went back. He went to India and studied mantra music. Our new album, by the way.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, though.
Our new album, we've taken mantra music to a whole different level.
Yeah.
I hope that you can just feed it into this podcast, because we go from what would be like Buddhist monk chanting on a mantra, Om Ang Brahmam Nama, to EDM on Sutra Nam. And then we do like country. The instruments that we're using on this album, pedal steel, soprano sax, violin, electric sitar, Fender electric, my guitars, right? There's a big part in a lot of these songs in which we've plugged in my Gibson J-45, and it's just got this punch. The J-45 sound is it's not as silky as Martin. It's got more punch and it reaches through the mix. So so anybody that is wanting to listen, you can get it on all the streamers, Spotify and Apple Music and YouTube Music. But it's called N-E-N and then Chant and then E-D. So it's Enchanted by Guru Singh. And my buddies play on it, right? Greco Barato is an insane guitarist, and he plays, Fender lead, plays the lead sitar on the album. Seal, real strong buddy of mine, sings, Carrie Ann Moss, who's an actress in Matrix and all kinds of things. She's got a glorious voice. Tony Robbins' wife, Sage, she sings on the, it's like a gathering. It's like we are the world gathering, right? Of people. And And then Caro, Greco's wife. By the way, Greco is a Brazilian musician, and he is just great. And Caro is this Brazilian singer. She is phenomenal on the album, too.
Did you record this all in person?
Yeah, we recorded this all in person and in Los Angeles. And that's why we also have a home in Los Angeles, is because we're two things. We're working in the film and television industry because we're developing a television series out of my book.
Wow.
Buried Treasures. And that's where all my buddies are that I record with. John Gilliton, the keyboardist and the engineer and producer of this new album, he won a Grammy. He composed New Attitude for Patti LaBelle. Mm-hmm. And and he's got this, R&B sound. It's just comes through on a lot of the tracks.
So cool. Buried Treasure, I've read. We talked about it the last year when we chatted. So you had this guitar. You were signed to Reprise Records. The rock and roll scene of Haight-Ashbury got very out of control, especially for someone trying to live clean and with a yogi background. You checked out. You went to Mexico, left this guitar with a friend.
Yeah.
Had just epic experience there, and then came back, and somehow this guitar in the height of the hippiedom was waiting for you, which is incredible.
Yeah, it was. You mentioned this, and I was just in Big Sur a couple of weeks ago. at a symposium at Esalen in Big Sur. And this guitar had been with me when I was frequenting Big Sur in the 60s. And I was thinking about how precious certain items are in everyone's life that have stayed with them.
Yeah.
You know, some people have their grandfather's watch. You know, some people have a ring that, this is my grandfather's ring, right?
Sure.
I actually have one. That guitar has had a connection with me that is, you know, unmistakable, because there have been times when that guitar could have been lost.
Yeah.
And yet we were able to remain together. And I just heard that Paul McCartney just got his original bass back.
Yeah.
And it had been stolen or something and traveled around, and it made its way back to him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these instruments, you know, they have soul.
Yeah.
They have an awareness. And to a non-musician, that might sound like, you know, kooky. But to musicians out there and to anyone who has a guitar collection, you know that this is truth.
Yeah. Do you remember at the age of 12 picking that guitar out?
Yeah. There was a little shop, and it wasn't new.
Yeah.
It was 2 years old when I bought it. So somebody had it for 2 years. And there was a little music store on a side street just off the avenue, you know, University Way. And that little side street had this shop that was probably very similar to your office here.
Yeah.
And that's why when I walked into your office, it just hit me.
You know, some guitars hanging, and we're
with
small.
all these guitars hanging around, and the banjo and the various things. And I looked at this guitar, and it just came off the wall, right? It just came off the wall, and I started playing it, and that was the one I had to get, right? And I had been playing this parlor guitar, and I had dreamed of a dreadnought body, right?
Sure.
And so when I saw that guitar and it had that, you know, jumbo body, it was like, oh my goodness, I had come to heaven.
And the mods were all done roughly what era?
So the modifications were all done in 1971.
Okay. So you were back from Mexico.
Yep, and I was fully involved in Kundalini yoga. I was fully playing mantra music. I was still jamming with some of my buddies. I'd still run up to San Francisco and jam with Jerry and other people up there. Yeah, in 1971, I decided I was going to, I wanted to put, interesting, I wanted to put, you know, these Grover pegs on. And there was this guitar maker. He had a music store, and he also was a luthier. And his name was Valdez. It was Valdez Guitars.
Okay.
And he made some of the most phenomenal instruments. If you have a Valdez guitar, he's no longer alive, but if you have a Valdez guitar, he put just unique craftsmanship into every one. As you can see from the work that he did.
Yeah.
He would do a lot of mother of pearl inlay. He would fastidiously do around the sound hole, you know, the inlay. Of course, this is original on that level. But yeah.
And where in LA was that?
He was on Santa Monica Boulevard, just east of San Vicente.
Okay.
In West Hollywood.
Okay.
And then that whole area got turned into restaurants and bars, and he moved his store right across the street from Guitar Center on Sunset Boulevard.
Okay. And was he a guy that the rock and roll and the stars would go to?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if you wanted some custom work done on a guitar, or if you wanted a guitar built, especially for you, you'd go to Valdez.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talk to me about mantra music, because I mean, I listen to a lot of music. You were commenting on my CDs. I listen to rock and roll and bluegrass and sometimes murder ballads, and there's always this kind of tension with a song structure. The mantra music and the new CD or the new album seems to be all joy. Is that wrong in thinking that?
No.
Okay.
Regardless of what color you paint a room,
Mm-hmm.
when you go to the paint store, they start out with a bucket of what's called base.
Yeah.
And it looks kind of white, kind of, nondescript, right?
Yeah.
And then they've got that machine. Now it's computerized,
Sure.
right? But they got that machine that squirts a little bit of tincture from all of these various colors into it. The base of the physical body is ease. The ease is the way the physical body is created, in a state of ease. Any distortion of that or any disruption to that is called dis-ease.
Mm-hmm.
The base state of the emotional body, all of our emotions, is joy. And any distortion to that creates the flavor of a different emotion, whether it's joy with a lot of this tincture becomes jealousy, right? Becomes anger, becomes sadness, becomes happiness, becomes enthusiasm, becomes all of these other kinds of physio-emotional states. Joy is that state that mantra music is attempting to get you back to, so that by listening to it, you can begin to feel it, or by participating in it, you can begin to feel it. And that's what mantra music is all about. It's bringing you back to that joy of safety. And then in that safety, you become vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And vulnerability with safety is a wide open state. In that wide open state, you become highly intuitive. Instead of operating on your sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight system, you're operating on what is known as the vagal system, the parasympathetic system, which is let me take a step back. Let me look at the bigger picture. I know there must be a needle in this haystack of jumble.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's an old saying, how do you get a needle out of a haystack? And that's with a gigantic magnet,
Mm-hmm.
right? You don't go searching. And the magnetism that comes out of that joy and that vulnerability, the intuitive magnetism, is literally what allows you to use that state, I call it a state of grace, to use that state of grace to solve some of the most intense problems that, one might feel. For example, in today's world, we're having so much diversity and so much animosity because of the diversity. Whereas diversity, just go to a dog park and check out the diversity in the dog
Sure.
park. And yet, for the most part, they're all getting along.
Yeah.
They all figure out a game to play, or they all figure out how to chase each other, or they all figure something out that's going to have them get along. And that's what humanity is very much lagging behind on.
Mm-hmm.
And so mantra music is about stepping into that equation with an attitude of, we got this. We can make this work. And it's not about burying our head in the sand and saying, all is well. It's about saying all is not well, but we've got the tools to work with it. We've got the tools to work with not well, and we've got the tools to enable the not well to become well. The subtitle on my book is The Journey from Where You Are to Who You Are. The book is Buried Treasures.
Yeah.
And that's what mantra music is able to do. Mantra music is able to take you from where you are and what's going on around you to who you are, and enabling that which is around you to support you.
Mm-hmm.
And when that which is around us supports us, that's when we're able to really come to terms with, I feel at home in this world. I feel at ease, again, ease, right?
Yeah.
The core, the base of the physical body. I feel at ease in this world. I mean, of course, I've been dealing with it since I was born almost, because I was always the weird one, right? The weird one in school, the weird one here, the weird one there. I was the weird one in San Francisco in the 60s because I was a non-user. And so my buddies, Jerry and Janice would vouch for me at parties and at gatherings, when we're all sitting around jamming. Because, everybody's going, okay, is that a narc, right? Back in the day, that was the word for a narcotics officer, right? Is that a narc?
You'd be really in disguise if you were a narc.
Yeah. And so the end result was that I learned how to not fit in and how to be comfortable in not fitting in. And come to find out, if you think about at a very subtle level, nobody in the world feels like they actually fit in.
Yeah.
Because that's the stimulus for growth, not fitting in.
Is the easiest way for someone in the comfort of their own home who's maybe scared to try out this music just to jam along with a track that whether it's your album or someone else's?
Yeah. Yeah. In my classes, I teach through the 13 Moon Studio. They're all online. And I'm looking at a couple of large screens that have, 49 little Zoom postage stamps, right? Each, right? And as I'm playing, 'cause my studios, both here in Seattle and in Los Angeles, are really sophisticated. I have a full-on audio input, so that I've got two mics on my voice, one dry, one wet. I've got a direct on my guitar. I've got a mic on my guitar, one dry, one wet, so that I can tune it, right, and make it just the right mix, just like a recording studio.
Yeah.
And so we're doing a lot of mantra music in my classes, in my yoga classes. Because that's one of the things about Kundalini Yoga is there's a lot of music in it. And I'm looking at the screen as I'm playing, and there's people on their keyboards.
Yeah.
There's people on their guitars. There's even one guy, he's playing the drums along with me. I don't mean it's coming through.
Yeah, they're muted.
But they're playing on their end, listening to what's coming out of my end. And mantra music is a join-in music. Mm-hmm. Mantra music is not a watch a performance music. It's a perform with the music kind of music. And, if you think about it, in all rock concerts, probably the highest moment of a rock concert was when the singer, was doing this, right? Sure. Back and forth to the audience, and that's when the audience feels included.
Yeah.
And that's the nature of mantra music, is it's an inclusive kind of music. Sometimes it's call and answer. Sometimes it's just, sing along with.
Yeah. Everyone of a certain generation, and if they went to a Dead show, they probably saw the Space Jam that may have gone on for 5 minutes or might have gone on for an hour. How do you edit? How do you figure out what makes the album, what doesn't? This is such a loose, improvised music. How do you pare it down?
Well, if you listen to Enchanted, you will see that we are joyfully guilty of not creating too much limitation.
Yeah.
The instrumentation is just phenomenal. The layers are phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
The articulation of the way in which the voices and the instruments are weaving together is masterful. And I feel that in my own presentation, my own performance. But John Gilliton is a master of pulling that off.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because I went to pick up Seal at his house, bring him to the studio.
Okay.
And I put the album on at the level that we had recorded it before he participates. And we're both sitting there, we're listening to it. And he says, "Ho ho, Guru Singh." We had listened to about 3 or 4 tracks. "Ho ho, Guru Singh." He said, "You might as well just take me back home." I said, "What?" And he says, "This is a finished product."
Yeah.
And I turned to him and I said, "Henry, I'm not asking you to sing backup. I'm bringing you in to sing duets with me." And so there's no finished product here. And so that's the level of sophistication that the mix of this album and the ability to get it all, the ability to get that inclusivity of mantra music into a recorded genre.
How much time did you give yourself to record this?
We started in February and we've just released it, but we had finished mastering by mid-June.
Okay. But how many sessions? Like many?
Oh, how many sessions? Well, we did it once a week for about 12 weeks.
Yeah.
So, and we'd go for about 3 to 4 hours per. So there's a lot of recording.
Yeah.
And the musicians and the singing, the singers were so good at their craft that it wasn't like they were following a written score.
Mm-hmm.
They were following what moved them. And this is the second album that Seal and I have done together, and it's the third album that Greco and Cotto and I have done together. It's actually the first album that John and I have done together. And so we were familiar with each other's musical inclinations, right, so to speak, right, where we're going to go from this moment to that moment, etc. And so we had a lot of history. But John came in and just did a phenomenal. The Sanskrit word for weaving is called tantra. Mm-hmm. You know, it's where tantric yoga comes from. And he wove the whole thing together, just in a remarkable way. I even, I've got a couple of 12-string guitars. We've even got 12-string on there. And on the EDM, I call it MDM, mantra dance music. But it's dun, 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 dun. And this is not what you would expect in a mantra. And people, it's getting a lot of super positive feedback. But it goes because of the pedal steel. You think, wow, this is feeling country, and then all of a sudden this other thing comes through, and you go, well, that's not country, right? And so we had a lot of fun working with this.
When you were recording those foundational tracks, like what you played, Seal, I'm thinking about, in a jazz club or in a bluegrass jam, there's sort of an unspoken of etiquette in terms of like, don't play over the other person, take turns soloing. Does that happen? And
Yep.
it's just free for all.
Nope, that happens.
Oh, it does happen.
It happens because I was very much influenced by jazz in the 50s.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that was, Les Paul was like my idol.
Sure.
Right? And as a matter of fact, I've been looking at some pictures of Les Paul guitars as of late,
Yeah, you do have, as we established last year, guitar acquisition syndrome. You definitely are afflicted with it. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got about a dozen. So
Yeah.
But the idea of what you were just saying, the etiquette of when do you come in and when do you stay back and when do you have the faith that your time will come, rather than the insecurity that I better get in now or I'm never getting in.
Yeah.
That etiquette is a trust, is a faith and trust system in music creation. And and the interesting thing is that I've had people say, okay, this is a guitar podcast.
Yeah.
But the voicing on a guitar is like the voicing in your own body. And my voice is getting younger as it gets broader because of the yoga that I do, opening the actual instrument itself. Like guitars age and sound richer because the wood gets more, as long as they're taken care of. And our bodies, as long as we take care of them, age and get richer also.
Yeah.
Because if we're not forcing the voice to only come from the vibrating, vocal cords, but we can bring the voice from even our arms, right? Our shoulders, our hips, our pelvis. We can put our voice through. Now that's the difference between someone who is really putting their voice into music and someone who is singing to the note. And I think that that's the same thing that's true with guitars. I mean, my guitars have to forgive me on a constant basis because that's why I use this here, because I'm continuously drumming on my guitar as well as playing, right?
Yeah.
And it's an important combination that you have respect for your instrument, just like having respect for your voice. So you are working with people that collect guitars, people that play guitars, people that enjoy guitars on an ongoing basis. What are some of the things that surprises you about when you do an interview? What have you been surprised over the last 6 months?
Well, over the last 6 months, oh boy. I mean, I think the thing that is unique about, and maybe it's unique to my situation and the Fretboard Journal situation, is, we have readers of every political stripe. We have readers of every color and gender and everything, and they all just love guitar, and they found the Fretboard Journal or the podcast that we do or the event through that love. And it is sort of this great equalizer. It might be different if we were trying to appeal to one specific classic rock genre or just jazz or anything. But I've always put out a pretty, as you're a great testament, musically omnivorous product. And so I think people who buy into it are up for an adventure and up for discovering things. And that's it's always a pleasant surprise.
What you just said is important in today's world, in that it's a thing that ties diversity together.
Yeah.
And that's not only important right now, but it's going to be extremely important going forward. Because going forward, humanity has the opportunity to embrace the diversity or to try and erase the diversity.
Yeah. And this, I guess, is the segue of all segues to, we're at this really unique point in history where at least half the people are starting to lose hope and starting to lose faith. And you're a person who I think people turn to for hope and calm and peace. And your inbox must be filling up with, help me, Guru Singh, what should we do? Mm-hmm. What do we do? What are you telling people more often than not right now?
I'm telling people what I'm personally doing. And that is that I am focusing even more acutely on getting out the message of inclusion and embracing even that which is criticizing you. Mm-hmm. Looking like I look, being who I am, has always run into criticism in the world. And so I'm skilled at navigating. Mm-hmm. Even as a young child, I had to learn to navigate criticism that would, and almost all children get criticized. It's just the nature of growing up. And so being able to tell people that throughout nature, very difficult times happen just before breakthroughs. Your wife will tell you, my wife will tell me, that there was a moment in birthing
Sure.
that was beyond anything that they had ever expected it to be like.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I'm going to make it through this moment, kind of thing. And the outcome, pun intended, is this beautiful additional life. And that is the nature of extremely hard moments in history. Mm-hmm. Because no matter what side of this last election any of you are on, and I'm facing the cameras here, there's going to be a continuum. There is going to be a movement in one direction and a counter movement in another direction, and that's just the nature of life that succeeds. The nature of life that doesn't succeed is when too much movement goes in one direction and there's no counterbalance, because life is all about the polarities. Newton's third law of motion: for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. That's the physics of the world. That's the physics of the forces of the world. That's the physics of life and the forces of life. And so you must embrace what is taking place, whether you like it or not, doesn't matter. You embrace it so that you can utilize the energy like a headwind in a sailboat. You utilize the energy in an angular way. And that's what makes the headwind not become your enemy. Because if what was going on in the world in today's moment was divided into friends and enemies, and my friends I will be with and my enemies I will avoid, then we're ignoring 50%, pretty much, 50% or maybe more of the world's energy, the world's human energy. And so we have to embrace in order to utilize, just like the sails of a sailboat will embrace the opposing wind that is trying to keep us from our destination.
Sure.
And we use angles of tack in sailing, and what it's called in human relations is being tactful.
Yeah.
And in doing so, you do so by kind of an internal rule, and that is that you don't sell out your values, and you don't ask the opposing wind to sell out its values either. You demonstrate how both sets of values can coexist. And that is now my writing. We're developing a television program, a television series. We'll be doing more albums. I'll be continuing to teach. You know, all of the things that I engage in will be available to all sides of the equation, so that it's not about, okay, this is our team over here and we're against that team over there. But this is the big picture that is incorporating both teams.
You must be in that rarefied place where, especially when you go down to LA, you have people following you of varying political stripes, some with lifestyles you may or may not agree with. And they're all turning to you for some knowledge. That's kind of doesn't usually happen, but I'm guessing that does when you're down there.
Well, yeah, it happens everywhere, wherever I am. And the beauty of it is that no matter who we are, we're all pumping blood.
Yeah.
No matter who we are, we're all drinking water. No matter who we are, we're all breathing air. No matter who we are, we're all engaging in, nutritional food of some form. And the common is that we all have these common needs and different attitudes. So what am I going to look at when I look at a person? I'm going to look at their attitude that I don't agree with, or I'm going to look at their common needs that I also share.
Yeah.
And I've learned this from a very young age, that I get a lot further in life, I feel a lot healthier in life if I relate to the commonality rather than the differences. I mean, people will look at me and they'll say, well, what is this? I mean, what's different about this than Christianity? And I say, well, let me talk to you about the similarities rather than the differences. Because I love Christianity, I love Judaism, I love Hinduism, I love Buddhism, I love Sikhism, I love all of the Islam, I love all of the various religions, and I consider them to be all revolving around the same source, right?
Yeah.
They're just different names for it. I don't know what car you drove to this room this morning, but I drove a Toyota Hybrid Highlander.
Yep.
And we probably got to this room in different kinds of vehicles, but we're still here in the room together.
Yeah.
So whatever vehicle one uses, religious vehicle one uses to get to that place of, grace and love, it doesn't really matter as long as you get to the place.
Yeah. I want to hear a little bit more about this TV show you're developing, but before that, election aside, I mean, the holidays are coming up. Those are a painful time and a joyful time for a lot of people. It's all the emotions. What other things are you trying to encourage people to do for themselves, just to get through the months?
Well, the holiday season is a season of sort of deep reflection, right? And deep connection. And of course, we've capitalized on it, right? And a lot of companies feel that the holiday season is their one time to strike it big, right? So they're out there trying to gain our attention, try to get us to respond. And then they influence our children and our grandchildren in order for them to make us want to get, and so that the economics keeps rolling. And, that's usually what puts a lot of stress into the holiday time. What I am looking forward to is that even the indigenous cultures, which is where most of these holidays place their moments on top of, were these astronomical moments when the sun is in a certain way, or when the various planets are in a certain way. And those indigenous cultures relating to it in that way brought about religious cultures that sort of followed the same thing. If you think about the history of Christmas or Hanukkah or any of the Islamic holidays or any of the other holidays, they all sort of follow this overarching astronomical kind of fixation of where are things. It's a winter solstice, it's a summer solstice, it's a spring equinox, it's a fall equinox. These components of the way in which the planet Earth functions amongst the solar system apparatus. And so what I really try to get people to understand during these holiday seasons, regardless of what holiday they're celebrating, is the idea of celebration is an idea of creating joy, creating calm, creating connection, creating reasons to come together. And when we stop trying to differentiate ourselves, when we stop trying to hold ourselves higher and reduce the need for hierarchy, that's when we begin to enjoy. I can be at ease in a Christian church, in a Jewish synagogue, in a Muslim mosque, in a Sikh temple, in a Hindu temple, in a Buddhist temple. I can be at ease participating with any of these cultures because I recognize, which is an interesting word, means again, and cognize means to know. So the word recognize means to know again. And so I recognize, or I recognize, the sensation that I feel in a Christian church, in a Jewish synagogue, in a Muslim mosque, in a Buddhist temple, in a Sikh gurdwara. I realize the sensations that I feel of deep worship. And when I can put the holiday season into that category of it's a time in which a lot of people are in deep worship, that's when the stress just vanishes from the experience.
Yeah. Amazing. This TV show, I want to hear about it because, I read the book. You went to the Copper Canyon of Mexico in was it 69, 70?
No, it was 68, 67, 68.
67, 68. Have you been back there?
No, that was part of as you remember in the book, that was part of the agreement that I was not coming back.
Yeah. You go on this hero's journey and do that. And so to make that a show, just historically accurate, is that what you're going for? Just a depiction of what happened there?
Historically accurate and super entertaining. So the first season, we don't even get into Mexico. So the first season takes place in Seattle and San Francisco, in the music industry, and with flash forwards and flashbacks of Mexico and my death scene and all of that, the draft board and all of that. And so that takes up the first 8 episodes, right?
This is all fleshed out. This is like done.
Oh yeah. Oh, we've got a director, a showrunner, we've got producers, we've got a business office, we've got a writing team, we've got the pilot already completely written. We've got the first season arc through 8 episodes all written out. And we've got the second season, sketched, second and third season sketched. Yeah.
Wow. And actors picked out yet or no?
We're looking. We're examining. Obviously somebody has to be able to sing and play the guitar. So
yeah. And what genre are we calling this? Is it on the drama scale, a comedy? Where are we at?
It's really going to have moments in all of those areas. And it's going to be, because there's going to be so much music, particularly in season 1, that it's going to be just rich, driven by music. I can remember working with television shows way back, that, like the Smothers Brothers show, right? And I had a really close friend that sort of brought me into that set and seeing how they worked. So I've always had, her name is Lee French. I've always had this sense that TV was an important part of life, right? It's a way of getting out there to people. And now that we have streaming, and there's so many different networks and streaming companies, there's and ways of viewing it, right? You can view it on your phone, you can view it on your iPad, you can on your tablet, you can view it on your computer, you can view it on your TV screen. There's so many ways of getting important messaging out. Mm-hmm. And so what Buried Treasures, the TV show, is going to be working towards is getting people into that harmonious nature through music and also through really intense story.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not comedy, though it'll have comedic moments. It's drama because there's some intense, storylines going on here. And then, of course, in season 2, it's going to be, in Mexico, and a lot of supernatural events taking place. And with flashbacks into music and all of that, so we go flash forwards into Mexico from season 1 and flashbacks into music from season 2. So it's going to be, a lot going on the screen.
Amazing. I mean, this is what makes you so interesting, is you're not saying technology is bad or Hollywood is bad or any medium is right or wrong. You're sort of just embracing it all, even as you're trying to pitch this TV show. It's kind of remarkable.
Yeah, well, those who say something that's really got momentum is bad are not going to make it, very far in life, know. And so it's the same way now with with a 2-party system in the United States and a 2-attitude system in the rest of the world. You can't say that the opposition is bad. That's like being in the ocean and saying that the wind is bad because it's not blowing in your direction. Mm-hmm. No, just get off your ass and use the wind, right? You're going to have to compromise your angles a little bit, not compromise your values. You're still going to where you're going.
Yeah.
But you're going to have to angle your way towards it instead of going directly towards it. Yeah, and that's the attitude that I have had my whole life, is that I may not be able to go directly towards what I want, but I'm going to get there.
I love it. You are a testimony to positive energy and clean living and taking care of your guitar. Everything looks great.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we did it. Round 2 with Guru Singh. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. When you see his life story on Netflix or Hulu or wherever it lands, you can say you heard about it here first on the Fretboard Journal podcast. Please stay connected with me. I'll be posting photos of Guru Singh's J-45 on the Fretboard Journal Instagram. It is something to behold. Please keep the feedback coming. Please take care of yourself this holiday season. And yes, of course, we'll have another podcast next week. We've also got another Truth About Vintage Amps installment. Our 55th issue will be hitting mailboxes soon, and all sorts of other surprises. Stay tuned.